Anyway, turn back Tom asks, what do I work as and what's my job? I work at a bookstore. That's it. Next set of questions. From the TheNeoCatZone. He asked some damn good ones, and I'm going to start with these. He asked me, 1, what are my opinions of the Big Six among our founding fathers? Well, what he considers the Big Six. Jefferson, Paine, Franklin, Adams, Madison, Washington. I will state them in the order that you stated. Jefferson, one of my favorites. I know he's controversial among certain people, especially among black people, because of the fact that in one hand he was against slavery, but on the other hand he owned slaves. While I consider that to be bullshit myself, I'm also not stupid to ignore the times. He was around during a time when slavery was perfectly fine to people, and at one time he thought that people like me with extra melanin in the skin didn't have much of an intellect. But yet this is the same guy who made sure that his slaves were highly educated, and I also found out that he was highly in debt, and because of the nature of his debts and notes, he actually was not able to get rid of his slaves until he cleared his debts, which he was never able to do. He died in poverty. So that's another interesting little quirk. But I like Jefferson for the simple reason that, and this is going to get into your third question, I like him for the simple reason that he was a philosophical anarchist. I like anarchists. I like rebels, period. Anybody who questions the state of authority on the nature of what the hell makes you think you're an authority automatically makes me start paying attention to them. Can't help it. And let's not forget that he was one of the most revolutionary, so that also kind of leaves me on the side. Paine. Definitely the same reasons. He was one of the most revolutionary of all of them, and I find it kind of funny how he's one of the least mentioned when you talk to teachers and when you hear pundits on TV talk about the founding fathers. Paine's almost never mentioned. There's a reason for that. This guy, quite frankly, if he was walking around today, would be vilified. He mistrusted corruption in government. He declared that it was up to the people to make sure that they were able to get rid of bad governments, and he was even against the tyranny of religions. Do you really think that would fly today in this country? I don't think so. Next up, Franklin. I think he's my favorite out of all of them. I know that he wasn't a philosophical anarchist, but he was also very sarcastic, very much a realist. One of my favorite quotes he's ever stated, and it was after he had finished going through signing the Constitution. They had asked him what he thought of it, and he basically answered them, "We've given you a republic if you can keep it." So that line alone to me made me realize that he knew a lot about human nature and how people acted. And I am pretty sure that if he was looking around the country today, he'd be like, that's what I thought. Adams. Fuck Adams. He did the freaking Alien and Sedition Acts. That alone makes me not like the guy. Madison. Madison's kind of weird to me. I'm not... In one hand, yeah, he had helped to write the Constitution, and he helped to develop the frame rate, you know, the foundation of how the country was started. I can't believe I said frame rate. I said he also was trying to say he was going to set the framing of the way the government was founded, and, like, you know, setting the Constitution, setting our Bill of Rights, you know, trying to make sure that, you know, individual rights weren't fucked with, but at the same time, he ended up agreeing with the central bank. He ended up, he also did some weird shit when he got older. He started trying to rewrite things that he said in the past because he was worried about his legacy. First off, if you're worried about your legacy that much that you have to start changing your words that you said in the past, I would think that's kind of suspect. And, you know, two, come on, dude, let it die. We all make mistakes. We tend to like people who make mistakes and learn from them rather than somebody who makes mistakes and then tries to hide them. You know. And then Washington. I honestly don't see what the big deal is. You know what I think the biggest reason why everyone goes crazy about Washington? Because number one, he was president, the first president, and two, he was a guy who pretty much knew how to keep order. But that's about it. There wasn't anything really, you know, outstanding about him when you compare him to some of the other founding fathers. He, you know, had some military experience and he knew how to keep order. In fact, that's why they picked him as to be the first president in the first place, because he knew how to, you know, generally knew how to keep things going. That's about it. Alright, I spent too much time on this question already. But yeah, next up, what are my thoughts on the philosophy of freedom that the Bill of Rights is founded upon? I do like the philosophy of freedom that the Bill of Rights is founded upon, but it also kind of, I mean, obviously the fact that they tried to put all those checks and balances in there gives me reason to believe that these men understood the problems of government to begin with. Remember, they just broke free from a government that they thought was corrupt. Now they're trying to form their own with the philosophy that governments can't even be instituted without the will of the people. And yet you're trying to pass laws and shit on them. Obviously they're worried about checks and balances to make sure that their individual freedoms wouldn't be fucked with, hence the Bill of Rights, which, while I really do like that, I think it kind of shows the quandaries of trying to form a free society with a government. You're gonna constantly keep bumping into these brick walls trying to find ways to keep government from intruding in people's lives, and sooner or later, the longer the governments go on, there's going to be more of a chance that it's going to fuck with people. And you can have some of the most virtuous people on earth in that government. Outside influences are going to try to find ways to manipulate that government and put its puppets in its place. We've seen that now. How many motherfuckers in government now are either puppets of corporations or religious organizations? Or both. This is what we're dealing with, folks, and their means of being able to fuck with us is a government. So while, to me, it's like the Bill of Rights, I agree with its premise. I like the fact that it's been included, but it also kind of shows the inherent weakness of trying to form a society that's supposed to, a free society, but you have a government over it. It's kind of like showing, right, they see, right, it's like something that's sort of turning in on itself. And sooner or later, it's going to be about to who's going to win out, those who crave freedom or those who want to dominate. And time again, time has shown that those who want to dominate tend to win out. Third question, Thomas Jefferson was actually a philosophical anarchist, and what do I think of that? I think it's fucking great. I think part of the reason why some of the ideas of freedom got introduced into society in the first place is because of guys like him. They understood, you know, the flaws of government. And the fact, I really think, if somebody's going to form a government, if you got no choice, and that's something else that I know sooner or later I'm going to have to get into, like maybe in another video or something. Forming nations, the larger the nation is, sooner or later you're going to, I think that it's just hard not to have some type of bureaucracy in place. So it's always good in my mind to have somebody there with the opinion of, why the fuck do we need you? You keep somebody like that around them, that kind of keeps them in check. If you've got a group of people who are supposed to rule and pass laws and all that, but then you got somebody either with them or close by to critique them in a position of some power who says that, you know what, we really don't need you. Why the fuck do we need you? We could do this on our own. What makes you think that you have somebody like that who's reasonable, not just simply a jackass, but somebody who's like, I'm going to keep my eye on you because I don't trust you motherfuckers. I think it does do a nice little checks and balances thing a little bit better than just simply having a document of the Bill of Rights. The Bill of Rights is one thing, but look how much shit of that stuff has been eroded over time. So, yeah. So enough of that. It goes to show you how good those questions were, that I spent all this time just on TheNeoCatZone's questions.